Young men are under assault in America today. It's no longer cool to be a dude. At least that's what the mainstream media and certain leftists would tell you. Well, I've got a young man here, Braeden Sorbo, who would differ with that. He's actually written a book called Embrace Masculinity: Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down. Why are people trying to put down dudes these days, Braden?
It's ironically a pretty simple answer. It's because men pose a threat to whoever's in charge. And so it's not a matter of if, a man is going to lead. The second chapter of the book is called The War Between the Patriarchies, and it states that it's not a matter of if a man's going to lead. It's a matter of whether or not the man in charge is going to be good or bad. And we've seen it throughout the entire course of history, men being good leaders and bad leaders. And when a man is a good leader, society thrives. When good men get together, countries are built, communities are established, and families are created. So we have this current leadership situation where the people in charge, and this isn't just specifically limited to government, this is in relation to the media, Hollywood, the news, mainstream media, as well as even the music industries and the type of content that is constantly being shoved down people's throats, walking through anywhere their TV is. And so good men are a threat to a bad ruler. So the bad rulers will do one of three things. They will, one, try to harness the strength of men. We saw that during the time of the Exodus with the Pharaoh and the Israelites, forcing slavery upon them, harnessing their power. And then the next stage of that was the the suppression of it, where they will essentially try to put in restrictions as to prevent a revolt or an uprising. And we're seeing that today with bread and circuses, just like the Romans did. How we have the football, basketball, all of these sports seasons that keep people complacent and distracted. And finally, if neither of those options work, the bad leaders will take to killing. They will take to eliminating. And what we have today in America is that final stage. And I know a lot of people are hearing that going, killing, no one's getting executed on the street for being a man. It's like, no, but there is a spiritual killing right now happening in this world with pornography. And what happens is they make pornography mainstream and normal. And what it does is it kills your spirit and drive. And so you are now complacent, subjugated, and spiritually dead, which is a combination of all three. And that is the stage that we're at in America today. And that is why men have become so weak. It's because they've been coerced and forced into it.
So you're a young guy. I believe you were homeschooled. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
So what did you do? And I've always wondered, I think that part of um, homeschooling is very positive from the standpoint that you're almost assured of a good education. I mean, my suspicion, without evidence, is that if you've got a mom or a dad who's willing to take that responsibility on, they're really going to put forth their best effort for their own child to make sure that they get a good education. But I wonder if the downside is that you are deprived of the social uh, aspects of going to school, much of which, for me as a kid, was not necessarily positive. I was a skinny, gangly, uncoordinated kid that wore glasses and braces and carried a briefcase to school. I was not the most popular kid on the campus, I can tell you. Of course, things have changed since I've matured.
Of
Uh,
course.
but it's not all good, but I do think that it is a good precursor to life because I learned some valuable coping skills. And I've learned how to take care of myself. So, what you understand what I'm getting at here? How did your experience from being homeschooled compare? And how did you develop the social skills, and where did you find that outlet?
Well, I was homeschooled starting in the beginning of third grade. So I had a little bit of a social kind of experimentation in the public school system. And I was on track to become one of the popular kids. I was one of the top athletes in my little elementary school, and I had
There
all
you
my
go.
friends and all this stuff. And so I have always been an extrovert. So making friends and being social pretty much comes second nature to me. Now, when it came to becoming homeschooled, there was a slight dip in my social life, but overall, I had youth group that I attended, and I made friends there. And so those friends from those public schools at the youth group I went to would invite me places. And so I constantly had a circle of people that I was around. So I never necessarily experienced the isolation that a lot of people consider homeschoolers to be. And so I really fail to see the downsides of homeschooling. I mean, that is ironically the way that the school system was originally designed by God. Obviously, the parents were tasked with raising their kids. That's what Proverbs says: teach a kid the way that he will go, and he will not depart from it all his life. And so, when we gave the schools the power and the influence and the control, it destroyed families
I
because
never
it took
gave
them
it to
apart.
them. I think they just flat out took it.
Yes.
It's authoritarian fascism, if you ask me. And I was never really that fond of many of my teachers. I don't know. When I think back on it, I would say maybe half and half. But the ones I didn't like were the ones that do this because I tell you to do it, and not because it's going to be in your best interest or good for you necessarily. But then there were another group of teachers who I felt like actually saw my worth and believed in me. And I remember those teachers and celebrate them to this day. And I have actually proactively reached out to them and thanked them for believing in me when a lot of other people did not. I say thank God for Brad, because otherwise I would have been dead last in my high school class. But somewhere along the line, I turned on. In college, I got to take the stuff I loved. They didn't tell you what to do or where to go or when to do it. And then I was able to somehow claw my way into law school, where I graduated in the top third of my class. So I do give a lot of the credit for that to the schooling that I got and those teachers who did see my future and believe in me. And I'm eternally grateful for that. But what about sports? How did you what outlet did you find for? I heard you say that you were a good athlete early on. You're a tough kid, took care of himself. How did you supplement that when you were homeschooled?
So I played a lot of sports when I was a kid. I played basketball, football, baseball, soccer, lacrosse, even tried tennis and golf for a little bit. I will say the one thing that I regret when I became homeschooled was I lost my aggressive edge, because I didn't feel the need to compete anymore. When I was in public school, I needed to compete for attention, for acclimates, for whatever. When I became homeschooled, I didn't necessarily feel that drive. And so my sports definitely reflected that. I wasn't as good of an athlete throughout them, but basically I played until I broke my hand in football, which was my freshman year of high school. And I had a coach who was then, like a year or two later, arrested for child abuse. So after dealing with him breaking my hand, I decided that football wasn't necessarily my thing. I stuck to basketball, and then I got into weightlifting, and I sort of gave it all up. I went into powerlifting for a year. I'm 6'5". I got up to 260 pounds, deadlifted over 500, squatted over 400, benched 315. Like, it was super fun. Love that. And I still do bodybuilding to this day because I believe in functional athletics. And so I've always been fit, or at least tried to be athletic. And it's reflected itself in great ways, just in every facet of my life. I mean, there is something so scientifically provable, but also crucial to a person's mental health when it comes to their physical health. There are direct correlations. So when you are physically strong and healthy, you are also mentally stronger
I
and
totally agree
healthier.
with you. And as an adult, I changed. I ran. I've lifted weights. I've gone to the gym for 30 years, in case you can't tell. And I was an avid golfer, and then now play a lot of tennis. And I do think that is important to one's self-esteem. When I'm bird hunting with the guy that owns the farm, and he's out of breath and is asking me how can I walk 10 miles and not get out of breath, it is reinforcing. It's flattering. But I guess the point of all this is, when I was younger, a little younger than you, and I was in high school and college, the jocks got the girls, man. And they were the cool kids. And if you could read, write, and do arithmetic, then you were a superstar. And those people were celebrated. Is that the case today? in schools, or is it something different?
I really wouldn't be able to give you a specific because I'm not in schools anymore, but I would say a lot of it has to do with political or social clout. I mean, a lot of people chase that online fame more than they chase anything else. And so guys will get healthy, they'll get in shape, but they care more about having a six pack to show it off on social media to try to get a girl than they do about actually using it functionally. And I'm not going to hate on the guys who are taking care of themselves. I will say that, going and sleeping around is an idiotic move and not something that you should be doing. You're a weak man if that's your mentality. But uh, society has changed in the sense that I would argue when you were a kid, when you were in high school, college, you or guys as a whole had to try to get laid. Whereas today, we have to try not to get laid. I mean, it's the most absurd thing ever. I have a shirt that says repeal the 19th Amendment, and girls will hit on me when I wear it. I have a shirt that says the future is patriarchy, and I have people approaching me like, hell yeah, man. Like, I have to try to avoid social confrontations, which is funny because obviously online it's the polar opposite. You have all these crazy leftists who are just yelling in the comment sections, thinking that they're the majority, when in reality they're slowly becoming a minority, at least among the social groups. Because when you get down to brass tacks, no woman wants a liberal man. They all want conservative men because they'll date a liberal man. They'll realize that he is more of a woman than they are. And they decide, well, that's not what I'm in this relationship for. And so they'll leave. And so you get these women complaining online that there's no good men, or at least no good liberal men. And all the attractive guys are conservative. It's like, yeah, your natural inclination is to go to someone who's strong, who's going to be able to protect and provide for you. And you have the conservative men who are going, I just want to get a nice woman who doesn't, just make herself available to every single person on the whole planet online. And we have this divide happening in America today, which is the biggest it's ever been in terms of the political spectrum. You have more women who voted blue this last election than ever before, and more men who voted red this last election than ever before. And so this divide is only going to keep growing until something has to give. And my hope is that the young men who read this book at sorbostudios.com, shameless plug, the young men who read Embrace Masculinity, stick their heels in, dig in, and continue to fight on this side, because eventually the tide will shift and come back towards the way of tradition, which is what I'm aiming for and the whole reason why we're here today.
Well, it's kind of a conundrum to me, really, because you see that there clearly is a movement from somewhere to, um, I don't know what the term is, to put down, to lessen the aura of a masculine guy. But then you have Tim Walz, when he runs for vice president, you would think that that would be his position, and that would be the camp we would find him in. Yet he's trying to portray himself as an auto mechanic and somebody that can shoot birds but can't load the shotgun. I mean, it's kind of crazy to me, really. I mean, why are we trying to, in some way, diminish the role of a masculine male in our society? I mean, and also, really, at the end of the day, isn't it an exercise in futility? Because I think that you're not really tinkering with man or woman, you're tinkering with God's natural order. I mean, guys were made the way they are because they attract females who want to procreate, and they want a husband that can fend for the family and provide for them and also look after them. I mean, am I missing something here? Or, you're young, I'm old, and I don't get it. I just frankly don't get it.
No, you're not missing anything. It's the pussification of America. It goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning of our talk, where men are being controlled, men are being manipulated, and men are being suppressed. And what happens is when these men become suppressed, it makes the women easily manipulated. It makes them easily controlled, which is why the biggest issue for young women voters in America this past election, 2024, was abortion. The biggest issues for men, the economy, immigration, the stock market, gas, rent prices, groceries.
Okay, so where do you think this movement is coming from? Who are the people that are trying to diminish the role of a masculine male in our society? But more importantly to me is, what do they hope to achieve from that?
Well, they hope to achieve the eradication. They hate. So basically, we can sit here and go, God created a divine order in the universe that is unchangeable, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's how God made it. We're not God. we can't do anything to change it, quote
Well,
unquote.
I think you
Those
just
people,
summarized my perspective. Do you
yes,
agree with that?
yes, without a doubt, there is a
Good.
universe. There is a universal order installed from the very beginning. Um, Men were meant to lead a family, women were meant to submit and respect the man's authority. That does not make women less than or less valuable than. It means that there is order. Jesus is not less than God. He's not less valuable than God, and he still submitted to the will of the Father. That's simply how it works. So the reason why this is currently happening in America is because the people in charge, and I mean everywhere. I'm not talking just the president or just Congress or just the House or just
Sure.
Hollywood. I'm talking all of the people collectively who run it hate Christ. They hate Christ and his children, Christians. Alvin Goldstein is the father of hardcore pornography in America today. He in the 70s or 80s is when he started to mainstream and normalize this this world in which we live, because everything technically has devolved since that time. And so Alvin Goldstein is quoted as saying, "We, the people in the porn business, hate Christ and his children. We want to desecrate his daughters, and this is why we do this business." So there is a very, very tactful reason why these people are doing it. It's because they hate Christ and what he stands for. They don't want this order in the universe. They want to destroy it. They want to upend it, and they want to be in charge. They want to make themselves God, and so they need to remove God as he currently sits. And so this goes back all the way to the original waves of feminism. The first rules that were passed once the 19th Amendment was in place were the rules that instigated the abortion acts with Margaret Sanger, eventually up to Planned Parenthood in 1972 with Roe v. Wade, and credit score, among other things. And so what has happened is we have essentially controlled and manipulated an entire gender into thinking that the most important thing for them to do is be able to kill the baby inside their stomach, which is an awful thing for anybody to do. I was just having a discussion with someone online who said, "What about rape and incest?" And I said, "You mean less than 0.5% of all abortions? It's terrible. Rape and incest is wrong. And we should punish the rapist, not the infant." And so this mental gymnastics that we are now reaping the fruit of, unfortunately, that was sown, not even, the problem is my generation didn't even sow it. I get to reap the fruits, which are very rotten, by the way, of previous generations who don't have to worry about the consequences of their actions, because I am now dealing with the consequences of their actions. And plenty of young men my age feel the same way, which is why we are so pissed off at the current state of the world.
Okay,
That
break.
is why
You have to stop a second and break that down for me. I'm not following you. Where are you coming from? You're saying my generation did something that is adversely affecting you now?
I'm saying that the previous generations before us
Yeah.
have slowly, and this is not any specific person, but have slowly been foregoing certain rights or certain things that they were once taken for granted. And now my generation, unfortunately, is reaping the benefits or the lack thereof. So, for example, in 1959, if you graduated from college, you were basically guaranteed a job with a salary that paid at minimum around $11,000 a year. If you take inflation into account, $11,000 in 1959 is worth like $120,000 today. Today, 2025, a college graduate, or I think 2024 was when the study was done, a college graduate is not guaranteed, but they could get a job with, $60,000 to $80,000 as a salary starting. That's at least a $40,000 discrepancy, not accounting for inflation when it comes to the housing market for rent or for groceries or gas or cars or like, so we are living in a world now where everything is more expensive. My dad was fourth of five kids, so seven people in his household. They lived in a small little household in Minnesota, Mound, a town of like 7,000 people. And they survived off of a seventh and eighth grade math and biology teacher's salary. You can't do that today.
How
There's a
many of
reason.
dad your dad and his siblings went to college?
So my dad went and double majored marketing and advertising, and then he dropped out at I think his junior year to go pursue acting, which worked out well for him. His older brother was one of the top accountants in the country before he retired a couple years ago. So he went to school. They all went to college in some degree, but that was when college was useful. I mean, that's why you have so many people foregoing college. There are more women going to college than there are men, and those women are accumulating insane amounts of debt. Most men are actually opting to go to a trade school because trades are dying out. In Florida, we have like, what's it, 300,000 different trade workers who will be retiring in the next couple years. That's a big, big gap because we need people to replace them, and we're not getting those numbers, at least yet. It's slowly making a comeback because people are realizing that college today doesn't actually benefit. I mean, I was working on a movie with this girl, and she told me that she was in college. I said, "Oh, what are you studying?" She goes, "Gender." And I said, "Oh, okay. Man, woman, male, female. Congratulations, you just passed. Now give me $80,000."
Yeah, I
Like,
think
this
we
girl
used
is
to call that
going.
biology.
This girl is.
I get where you're coming from. I don't know about your statistics on the income. I think there might be also that old rule of supply and demand coming into play a little bit. I mean, my dad did not go to college. He grew up on a farm. He worked his butt off and ended up being president of a bank. But people that did go to college were going to make a lot of money than he did starting out. And I just, we've educated or availed a college education to virtually every living human being. If they can pass a standardized test, they can go to college. So I don't know if that's a part of it or not, but you make very valuable points. And, Braeden, I really like hanging out with young people, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. And you are wise beyond your years, 23 years old. You've written a book. I'm still waiting to write my first one. It's called Embrace Masculinity, Lifting Men Up in a World That Pushes Them Down. Braden's also an actor. He has had roles in about 10 movies that I count. And I think we're going to be hearing a lot more from you in the future. And I hope you'll come over here to West Palm Beach and let's grab lunch or a cup of coffee or, I don't know, maybe an adult beverage. And you can show me how you work your magic on all these ladies.
That sounds good to me.
Thank you so much for coming on, Braeden, and best of wishes. Where do we find your book, and where can we keep track of you?
So people can go to braedensorbo.com, and that there is a shop tab if they want to get the book from there, but that will have my about section and all of my other social links. Online, it's just Braeden Sorbo.
And when's the book come out?
The book is officially available for pre-sale right now, and in the next couple weeks, mid to late April, is when all ordered copies for pre-sale will be shipping out, and everything else will be following suit.
And where do you buy the book?
Buy the book at sorbostudios.com.
There you go. All right. Well, congratulations to you on your first book, one of many to come. And are you still pursuing your acting career?
I am. I'm actually working on a new script right now. I'm very excited to hopefully turn into a movie.
Well, good. Well, I look forward to getting to know you better and tracking your progress into the future. And based on our brief time together, I think this generation is going to turn out just fine.
We can only hope.
Have a great rest of your weekend, Braeden.
Thanks, you too.